Hello and welcome to the Pots Trowels Gardening Podcast with me, Martin, Sean
Hello.
and Jill.
Hi. Well, it's a great time to be transplanting or moving plants in a garden. So we've got some information about that coming up with Martin later on. And also renewal pruning, which sounds very intriguing, doesn't it? And also some questions on rootstocks. We're going to be covering all of that later on.
And later on in the episode, I'm also going to be talking to Katy Merrington. Katy is the cultural gardener at the Hepworth Wakefield Garden in Yorkshire, but she's also the new garden advisor at Harlow Carr.
And we should say thank you, of course, to our sponsors, Plant Grow, who are based in Norfolk, in that gorgeous Norfolk countryside. And they turn the waste from making green electricity into a range of really good things for our garden. So compost, topsoils, mulch and plant food as well.
Marvellous it is too.
Shall we go and meet Katy?
Yes, let's. So, Katy, you are the new garden advisor here at RHS Harlow Carr. So, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's really lovely to be part of the garden advisors team. Being based in Yorkshire at another garden at the Hepworth Wakefield Garden. We're part of Yorkshire's sort of array of amazing gardens. So it's wonderful to be able to work together and look at what each other are doing and be part of that together.
Yeah, well, we're really pleased that you're here because you've been on the radar for a couple of years, a name to watch. So really good that you've said that you will do it and you'll be here now for the next 10 years or 2 5-year stints. It's a bit like a prison sentence in a way.
I think, John Grimshaw is a hard act to follow. I definitely don't have his level of elite plant knowledge. I think... But what I can bring to the garden maybe is a sense of looking at things from more of a design perspective or the picture of how things flow together. Where I work, it's a garden at an art gallery, and so we very much think of it as a living kind of composition. It's, I think, one of the hardest art forms to work in a garden because every element of it is alive. It's not a static thing. It changes whilst you're sleeping, doesn't it, every day?
Yeah.
And that's what's wonderful about it. And when I was training in horticulture, I trained at Harlow Carr, so it has a special place in my heart, Harlow Carr. And it's a garden that's really always evolving in a way that many gardens don't have such flexibility. So Harlow Carr's come on a real journey as it's developed. And it's wonderful to be part of its next chapter.
Yeah. So what got you into horticulture in the first place then? You mentioned you did some of your training here, but what made you decide, I want to work in horticulture?
I originally studied fine art at university, and then I worked in various jobs within the arts for a while. But I was doing freelance things, and I always needed a bit of regular income. So me and a friend started to offer housekeeping and cleaning for people locally in some of the big houses. And actually, some of those householders would then say, can you help in the garden today instead of inside? And some of the people became great friends, and they're really fabulous gardeners, particularly a lady called Rosemary who really taught me what to do. And we wouldn't do anything in the garden with regards to pruning without consulting the RHS book, and she taught me to study it, I think, rather than just hack and slash and make an attempt at without any knowledge. And then I got an allotment, and it was actually only because one of the people that I'd done gardening for in their homes, an elderly couple, passed away and left me some money because they were retired professors and they were big believers in lifelong learning. So they gave me a little bit of money, and I thought I should use it for a course because that's what they would have liked. And I used it to do my RHS level 2, which is often the sort of foundation of a horticultural career. So it was partly thanks to them. So it's a lovely story, and their family still keep in touch with me and come and visit me wherever I work.
Yeah, no, that is a lovely story to think, they've given you that step up to get into horticulture and train in it. So how long ago was that you were actually here at Harlow Carr as a student?
Oh, we were trying to work it out today, but I think it's about 9 years.
Okay. So in those 9 years, I'm sure the gardens have changed quite a bit because there's been a lot of development over that time.
Yeah, huge development. I think it's fair to say when I was here, the garden felt a little bit bitty. There were pockets that were absolutely incredible, but then you took a bit of a strange journey to get to the next bit that looked incredible because the site had never been initially created with a master plan in mind, like looking right back. And so a lot of work has gone on to make the place flow together and to just to bring you on a journey through it that feels more cohesive and more pleasing, and so that every corner you turn there's something exciting to look at and something beautiful to learn. So it's really being transformed in all different ways.
Yes, because Paul Cook would have been here then 9 years ago, but he wouldn't have been here long. And of course now he's just gone after 12 years and Fiona's taken over. So the garden will probably go through more changes. But that's, I suppose, part of a garden, isn't it? It changes and evolves. It should never be static.
Yeah, a garden can only be a garden if it's gardened. So you need the gardeners to be working for it to be a garden. So it will always change. And I think that's what's lovely about this site. It has a lot of potential with all its water and its different topography, but it also has a lot of challenges. We've got climate change really challenging us in gardening now, and being part of the big RHS family with the other gardens, there's sort of opportunity to see what's Harlow Carr's place within that, and how does it be a place for learning for home gardeners, because you want to come here and take something away that's really useful in what's going to be quite challenging times for gardening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the big things about the RHS Gardens. It's all about inspiring and giving the public ideas so they can take them home. So what we'll do, we'll take a little break and then we're going to come back to you, and I want to find out all about the garden at the Hepworth Gallery and what you do there.
Well, coming up, we'll be talking about transplanting or moving plants in a garden. That'll come up in the jobs later. And shortly, we've got some listeners' questions on rootstocks. So that's tree related. But yeah, Katy, it looks like she's going to be bringing a right breath of fresh air to Harlow Carr.
Yeah, she is. I mean, she's one of the youngest advisors we've had for a long time, which is good to encourage young people. And it's the first time I'd met Katy. I knew of Katy and the work she's done. So it's really, really good to meet her. And she'll just have a different look, I think, at the way we do, which is what it's all about. You need various people to have their thoughts so we can all contribute.
And of course, she's just taken over as garden advisor. Last week in our podcast, we chatted to John Grimshaw, who is the outgoing garden advisor as well, isn't he?
So Katy officially starts in January. It all changes over on January the 1st.
We talked it last week, didn't we? But there's 3 at a time, is it? 3?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, yes, we're still only 2 because it will be me, Katy, and then because we've fallen behind with one, we need to get a third one. So,
Sean, there's a
John,
job opportunity.
Sorry, seniors, as far as the eye can see.
I ought to mention the salary is 0.
Yeah.
It's quite a commute for me, and I expect they'd have to know something about gardens.
You get a Betty's lunch, but yes, it would help.
Yes. Coming up, we've got those listeners' questions. Before we talk a bit more about Katy, just to remind you, info@potsandtrowels.com is our email address. So do drop us a question if you've got one, because we do answer as all the questions we get.
And please do that, because having answered questions live on BBC Radio for 30 years, lots of local BBC stations no longer do that service anymore. So if you do want to get an answer, it's not live. Yes, you're watching this probably a day or listening to it a day or 2 after we've done it, but get in touch with your questions and we will answer anything that you ask.
Yeah, just let us know where you are.
I was going to say, let us know where you are, and also if there's a photograph that will enhance the question, then send us that as well.
Well, when we get back to Katy, we're going to be hearing about her work at Hepworth Wakefield, and Hepworth Wakefield is named after Barbara Hepworth, a sculptor, and I did a bit of sculpture in my time, do you know?
Did you really?
I'll tell you.
The old Potter's Wheel?
No Potter's Wheel, but I'll tell you all about that after we hear more about Katy.
I'm intrigued.
Let's get into listeners' questions.
Okay.
I'll just leave
go
that
on.
Well,
hanging there.
I have to say, we are in danger of having a whole podcast on this question.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, because it's quite detailed, I think.
Right, okay.
So it's in sort of 2 parts, isn't it? So you've had a question.
Yeah, there's a question on YouTube on the how to create an apple cordon video, which is about pruning apple trees in a certain way. What rootstock did you use for these, please? It's a lovely, clear video, and that's from Bino2100 over on YouTube. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Bino.
Would it be worth me telling you about the other questions as well? Because it might combine.
Okay,
yeah,
right,
we can have a sort of good
then.
chat about rootstock, but just make sure you don't forget.
Like you two
Bino's.
gonna have a lie down.
That could be. Well,
But Marley's lying down here, so I'm
I
going
might take the dog for a walk or something. Yeah. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Andrea Bradley, who is one of our regular listeners, is married to David, and it's actually David's question, but it came from Andrea. So
you're asking
David,
for a friend.
Yes, David's quite concerned about rootstock. It's obviously a big issue for him at the moment. So David, don't worry. Martin will help you with all your queries. So it's in 3 parts. Now, David has seen lots of trees that are grafted onto a rootstock, and wants to know, firstly, what is a rootstock? So we're going back to sort of bare basics here. Secondly, how is that particular rootstock chosen for that particular job?
Yes.
So it might be apples or another. And then thirdly, what happens, this is where David gets a bit worried, what happens to the stem of the decapitated rootstock? Nobody's ever asked that question before,
Oh,
David.
really interesting question.
Yeah.
Could you perhaps then, maybe it just gets planted again to create a next...
Or could you graft something onto that?
Yeah. Okay, right.
Don't know.
I think this is Martin's.
Yes,
This is me,
definitely.
right. Well, let's start with Beano then. Beano's question was the apple cordons that we planted in the garden a couple of years ago. We did vertical cordons, and for those that don't know, a cordon apple it's just a single stem. You don't let it grow into a tree and get that lovely shape. You train a single stem. Traditionally, they were planted at 45 degrees, known as an oblique cordon, but sort of the more modern way, and it's been done commercially on fruit farms, is to grow vertical cordons. So you just grow a stem. And the great thing is you can grow a lot of apples in a small space. You can grow them against the wall or in the open. We've planted 15 in a row, and we've planted them just 60 centimetres, 2 feet apart. So you can get a lot of fruit in a small area. And you grow them as a single stem, you get side shoots that grow out, and then what you do in late summer is shorten those side shoots back. And then you get these little short stumpy growths known as spurs, and it's on that you get your blossom and your fruit the following year. In the meantime, it's also producing a new shoot through the summer. So it's an annual thing, is pruning it back, and it builds up this lovely sort of column of sort of spurs and all gnarly growth, and you'll get loads of fruit on it. The question was, what was the rootstock? But I just needed to make this clear.
Okay.
Though I prefer to graft onto, for that type of thing, on a what they call an M106, and that all apple rootstocks begin with an M. Some used to be MM, but they tend to say M now. So an M106, which is what we call a semi-dwarfing. So it will produce a medium-sized tree, not a giant, not a little dwarf one. And the reason for that, although we're not growing a big tree with the cordon, is if you're planting them all close together, there's a lot of competition for moisture and nutrients in a small area, whereas a 106 has that slightly stronger root, and it means that it will get plenty of nutrients. The other one that you can plant is you could plant an M26, and that one is slightly less vigorous, but again, ideal. But 106 is the one that you'll tend to get.
So the different codes refer to its kind of habit, is that right?
Yeah.
So how it's going to affect what grows on top of it.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
I mean, your rootstocks go from very dwarfing to vigorous. So that rootstock will determine how big the root is, and the size of the roots will determine how much top growth you get. Yeah. So they've been developed, and they were all developed at 2 experimental horticultural stations. One was East Malling and one was Merton, and that's why we get the MM Morton Merlin. So
I thought it was like for malice, I assume.
no, could be, yes. That's
I think
how it
that's
comes
Latin
from.
name for
Yes, it is, Sean. Yeah.
Learning
so
stuff.
I hope that. So I use a 106, but you want sort of semi-dwarfing. Don't put them on a very dwarfing one, otherwise they'll never get to the height that you want. If you put them on a vigorous one, they'll grow so fast you won't be able to control them. So that mid-range of rootstock is what you want.
Okay.
So David's was, just remind me,
Well,
what happens to it and why use
What
them?
is a rootstock, first of all?
Well, a rootstock is then, if you're growing apples, either crab apples or eating apples, the rootstock has got to be the same family. So you can't graft an apple onto a birch tree. So it's got to be related in that respect. So apples are put on apples, pears are put onto pear or quince rootstock. Lots of ornamental trees, birch, I've mentioned, the named cultivars are often grafted onto just the common birch, and that gives it the vigour and the strength, and it means you've got uniformity. Roses are budded, which is a form of grafting. So although we've talked in the past about growing them from cuttings, commercially, they grow a root stock, which is a rose, usually a variety called Laxa. They're all consistently the same, and they put the buds of the rose on, and that means the whole field will grow at the same height instead of some bigger than others. So root stock is really what gives it the vigour or lack of vigour, depending what it is.
Okay.
And when it comes to grafting an apple, you have your root stock growing. So it's usually about a year, 18 months old, pencil thickness stem, single stem, maybe 45 centimetres tall. But we normally graft at about 15 centimetres above ground level. So what you would do is you would chop off the root stock at the right time, usually late winter, spring, chop the rootstock down to that 15 centimetres, take a piece of in this case we're doing an apple, a piece of the apple branch that you want to grow, Bramley apple. You then make matching cuts on both pieces. Have we never done a video on this?
I'm sure we have.
Because if not, we should do.
You know what, we have had a podcast episode where you talked to an expert in this, and he explained it. But I don't think we've ever seen it. Maybe.
Right, well, we need to do a video then. It's the wrong time of the year, but we will.
I apologise if someone's listening and goes, yes, you have done a video.
Yeah.
It's been 6 years and we've done hundreds of videos, so we don't always remember what we have and what we haven't.
I can't believe we haven't, because it's something that Martin loves doing. So it's
you keep explaining it.
Yeah.
I'm
So
going to
you've
look
got
it
your
up.
rootstock with the roots on in a pot or in the ground. You've got your piece of apple, which we call the scion. You make matching cuts so that the idea is we're matching the bark together. You bind them together with tape, and then that heals over like a scab, and then water can go up through the roots and carry on up into the piece you've grafted onto the top. And then when spring gets here, the buds grow and you've got your new tree. So that is the basic process of grafting. Now you've taken off the top, you've cut off the top, maybe foot of that root stock, which you say is about pencil thickness. Sadly, that is never used. That just gets shredded and you get rid of it. So you can't use that. That is just, you've got to get rid of that. So you can't do anything with it.
right.
We did How to Graft Apple and Fruit Trees in 2021.
Blimey,
So
that's a long time
I'll
ago.
put a link to that in the show notes. And yes, that's...
Oh, I look so young on that video there, don't I?
Is that you?
Less grey.
Still got that jumper though.
So I think you've covered everything. How is that particular rootstock chosen? It's just depending on how vigorous you want it to be.
Exactly, yes. I mean, every type of tree has a rootstock that will suit it. As I say, whether it's a birch, an apple, a pear, plums have a different one. So they're all very closely related. Some could be different vigours.
If you put the decapitated bit of them,
I was going to ask about the decapitated
could you
bit.
put that
Would that root?
onto another rootstock?
But what would be the benefit of putting a
Well, I
rootstock
don't
on
know,
a
just because
rootstock?
David's
It would
concerned
grow.
about it, and we don't want to
But
waste.
does it just get thrown away?
tree.
It gets thrown away.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
I mean,
Seems a little
commercially,
harsh.
where these rootstocks are grown by specialist nurseries, they are actually grown from cuttings. So they cut the parent rootstock plant down. It produces these strong new growths. They cut them off from where they grew, and they heat them on heated sand benches, and they can get them. They're not easy to root at home. You've got to give them exactly the right conditions, and then they will root and then lifted, and that's it. So
And where does Joe Public get a root? You know, if I wanted to have a go at grafting, where do you get the rootstock from?
well, they're not commonly available. That's the problem, because they're obviously used in the trade. Nurserymen use
and
them.
they need
but-
to be fresh. So it's not like they could be put into a garden centre.
No, well, you could pot
Feet.
them. I mean, sometimes I buy them and put them in a pot and then graft them. But yes, they're grown on an annual basis. Ideally, if you want to have a go, you could either go on to the computer and do a search for fruit root stocks, apple root stocks. You might find a nursery that grows them that would sell you just 2 or 3 or 4 if you wanted to have a go. But they're not.
But it's important that it's the right time of the year. That's the thing, isn't
Absolutely,
it?
yeah. And grafting is done in the dormant season, just before the trees start into growth.
Okay.
Okay, I feel like we could have done an entire episode on this.
Absolutely, yes. I hope, David, that's eased your sort of worrying and thoughts about grafting and rootstocks. But Andrew, I think you need to give David another job in the garden and keep him busy.
Absolutely. Fabulous. Should we go back to Katy then?
Yes, let's. So tell me about the Hepworth Gallery, the garden there. I embarrassed to say I've never been, and now we've met, I'm going to make a point of coming to visit. But how did you get that job, and how long have you been there?
Yeah, so if you haven't been to the Hepworth Wakefield, it's an amazing art gallery and creative space in Wakefield in the heart of Yorkshire. And it's named after Barbara Hepworth, the sculptor who was born in Wakefield, but of course later moved to St Ives. And it's in an area of the waterfront that's been undergoing development. But when the art gallery was built, because it's relatively young, the gallery in itself is only 14 years old, at the back of the gallery was a big plot of flat lawn. There was nothing on it. The council just mowed it, and it had a diagonal line where people shuffled across to the shopping park. And they had a vision to transform this piece of unloved green space into a really beautiful garden. And so they commissioned a competition, and Tom Stewart Smith, the garden designer, won it. And he designed the garden really with year-round interest in mind. And I've been the gardener there since it was built in 2019. And it's a lovely space because it's totally free. It has no walls or boundaries. Anyone can come in. And yet we keep it to a really top quality standard, the standard that perhaps you'd normally have to pay to see. Because the Hepworth Wakefield really believe that, as Barbara Hepworth was, you can be inspired by being in the natural world. And not everyone has the money to get in a car and drive to somewhere like Harlow Carr or pay the money you need to enter it. And so by bringing that beauty of flowers and wonderful colour and texture to the city centre, you can create that something that's free for anyone to enjoy in their day-to-day lives, as well as for visitors coming specially.
So do you find you get lots of local people that live in and around Wakefield using it on a regular basis?
Yeah, you do. It's really loved by people. There's a little girl, and she once came running up to me and she said, we think of this as our garden because we live in a flat and we don't have a garden. And you think, well, she's got a Tom Stewart Smith garden. You'd pay a lot to have that one of those designed. Yeah. So there's such a power in having, beauty and green space on your doorstep, and not all cities have that. And so the Hepworth did something really powerful in reaching out into the city beyond their walls and saying, let's make something that's for everybody, really believing in the power of beauty and that just having somewhere to sit tranquil, to walk the dog, or maybe stop and eat your sandwich, or just stop and smell a flower, it can change your whole spirit for the day.
Absolutely, yeah. There's that sort of healing properties of being out with nature and plants, isn't it? So, I mean, it sounds amazing. So definitely on the list to do. How do you look after it? Have you got a big team that help you do this? Are you one of 30 people there?
I wish I did, but I have to say I'm the only paid gardener there because it's quite small. It's 1 acre, so it's not very big. But
it's not quite big for one gardener, though, isn't it?
It can be a lot of work. It's more work at certain times of year than others, of course. It's mostly herbaceous perennials, but we have a wonderful team of dedicated local volunteers, so they come and help. And yes, they love it, and we're keeping them busy at the moment. A lot of leaf raking and planting up some new little areas.
Yeah, and I suppose, the volunteers, I mean, Harlow Carr has lots of volunteers. I think most gardens do now, don't they? Public gardens have volunteers to help keep everything looking good. And I would imagine the volunteers that you've got, like elsewhere, they take great pride in helping and looking after that garden. They treat it as their own garden almost.
Yeah, it's really nice to have that team with you that care about it as much as you do as a gardener. In fact, sometimes I have to rein them in if someone's up to something. They're about to run over and tell them what's what, and sometimes you have to say, hang on there, let's go gentle. But people are really protective of it, and because it's an urban open space, it's different to a garden like Harlow Carr, where once you've paid to come in, you have kind of agreed to some kind of, I don't know, sense of what you're coming to, that you might respect it. So in a city open park, it's quite different. So it's great to have the volunteers for their moral support as well as their practical support.
Yeah, I can imagine. So finally, you work in this beautiful garden all year round. You're going to be visiting Harlow Carr for meetings and doing the other RHS gardens. But what about your own garden? Do you go home after a busy day in the garden office, as it were, and set about the garden? Have you got a big garden or small garden?
I'd like to say that I had an amazing garden at home, but about 3 years ago, I bought a little house, which was buying my first house, so it was a big thing to do. And I chose this house because it had a little plot of waste ground to the side, which was fully covered in brambles taller than your head, and you couldn't see what was in there. In fact, people told me there might be cars or sheds, so it was hard to know. And there was a car, but luckily it was broken into pieces, so I could get it out. But then, unfortunately, all that vegetation was covering up a bad part of the wall on the house on the side. It's quite a very old house. And it turns out I've spent all my time working on the stone masonry on the house, and it's taken all my energy. So the poor garden, I've managed to conquer the brambles in part and put part of it to lawn, because it was brambles and bindweed. And so really my main first quest was just to try and sort of clean the soil of the bindweed. And so I did that by just laying cardboard or some black plastic for a couple of years, and actually it's done the job. So now it's almost a workable space now. But I must admit, it's a blank canvas. I haven't done anything with it, but it's got good potential. And it's just great to have that space to experiment. So I'm doing a few experiments. Like, I'm keeping all my rubble from the houseworks and just seeing what I can do with that, and trying not to bring in too much material, not to give it away. Just think, right, what is here? What can you do with what's already here?
Yes, I know somebody down in Essex. They demolished a building and they kept the rubble there, mixed it in with the soil, ground it up, and they planted sort of very, it's a sunny position, succulents on there and sun-loving plants that need the drainage. So you can make good use of all of that. But I mean, you've done all the hard work now with the brambles and the bindweed. So next year is probably going to be the year when you start setting it out and planting.
Yeah, it's quite exciting now to think about it and to think, you can, now you're at a stage where you can be more playful. And it's also, I think, often in gardening, if we have somewhere new, there's a temptation to rush. And actually the best thing you can do is just watch the space. And having watched it now for 3 years, you know where the sun is, you know where you want your patio. I know that there's bats living up in the house, and so you're thinking, okay, maybe I put a little pond there so that they can get more little bugs to eat. And you know more about the ecosystem, or what birds are in the hedge or on the other side. And so in taking that time to get to know it, it's been no bad thing.
It's a good thing to have. Unfortunately, I don't possess patience. I mean, I've been gardening for nearly 50 years and I still tend to rush. I always tell people wait a year, but I can't do it myself. So, I'm probably getting too old now to change my habits. But it sounds it's going to be as if though it's going to be exciting. So hopefully we can catch up about that in a few years' time. Katy, it's been great to meet you. The first time we've met, and I shall see you again when we're having meetings here at Harlow Carr. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It was really fun.
Thank you.
Coming up later in the podcast, Martin's going to be telling us about renewal pruning.
Ooh,
Nearly said
yes,
that wrong, didn't I?
didn't you?
Pruning.
Yes, but I will be doing that. Yes, but before that, Sean, you mentioned that you've been in the sculptural world. I didn't know this. This is a side of you we don't know anything about.
No, so before I picked a video camera up, art was my thing, and art, specifically sculpture, was my thing. At school, I did ceramics, and in our school, we didn't have potter's wheels, so it was making things either slab built, where you basically roll out slabs of clay and you build them, or coil pots. But it wasn't so much pots, it was sculptures. So we were building people. I did a huge kind of Tina Turner head with all this crazy hair coming out of it. It was really, really exciting to do. And so I went and did A-level sculpture, and then I went to art college, and that's where I found a video camera stuff. Right. This feels a bit easier. But yeah, the whole thing of making stuff with clay and waiting for it in the kiln and hoping you hadn't left an air bubble in it so it wasn't going to explode and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I've not been to Hepworth Wakefield, but I have been to the Yorkshire Sculpture Park a couple of times, which is also another fabulous bit of sculpture up in Yorkshire, which has lots of sculptures outside, large Henry Moores and this sort of stuff. So I did years ago know about Barbara Hepworth, and a lot of that's just sort of sunk into the background now.
And have you still got any of your work?
Yeah, there's a shell in my garden. So I did, because I grew up on the seaside, I did it's going to sound all arty now, but I did a piece which was inspired by man's impact on nature. There you go. That all sounds very arty-farty, doesn't it? But a conch shell made out of clay with tyre tracks across it.
Oh, yes.
which is in our garden, but unfortunately I think it's hidden under the camellia
So
tree.
never seen
right.
it.
No.
Oh, we need
Well,
to
we know
look
the
next time we
camellia.
come round.
Yeah, well, I keep
Yeah.
thinking about throwing it away because it feels.
No.
I know, but it's like for me, it's 30 years ago I did
No,
this as
no.
a thing, and
No,
No,
that's
because if you go back into sculpting, then
Yeah.
that's one of your early works.
Well,
it could be
true.
worth a fortune.
And I did a huge kind of suit of armor, but the top part, head and shoulders, made of drinks cans. So Coca-Cola and Sprite and all this.
Okay.
And all of those are inside out. So you just saw the different silvers that were on the inside of the cans. But if you looked under it, you'd see all the different logos and
right.
stuff. And somebody had that in their garden because it was too big for me to keep and I lost track of it. So it's probably gone to the tip a very long time ago. But if somebody's found a head and shoulders of a Coke can,
it's by Sean.
then it's by me.
Yeah.
So
Do you ever fancy going back into it? And
I always liked it. I enjoy doing it, and I like the process of doing it. But no, I think I've just found different ways to express my
Well,
creativity.
you never know as you get
Well,
older.
hang on to
and-
the shell because when Pots and Trowels hits the big time, and
Yeah.
and you're,
I thought you were going to say you'll have to start making some of the
you're
pots.
even more famous, then you could sell that for a one-off.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
we go. Watch this space. But I will take bids.
Yes, yeah, we need to.
What
see
happened
it.
to Tina Turner's head
Do
then?
you know what? I
Is that-
can't remember. I know. Well, one thing I remember is that the hair, which was basically lots of very curly, large pieces of clay. Of
Yeah.
course, every time you
Yeah,
moved
it
it
got
somewhere,
A bit
so he ended up bald.
Yeah.
With little bits of glue where some of it had tried to be fixed at times. So I think it disappeared after the bald stage. So,
Yeah.
Was it simply the best?
It was simply the best.
very
Yeah.
I
good.
tell you what I did do, and this was back at school. So when I was about 15, I made a teapot out of a skateboarding teapot. Right, so imagine a clay skateboard with a character on, with a hand on a hip, kind of like I'm doing this for those watching YouTube. You can see this, but obviously you can't if you're listening. But a hand on a hip and a hand out like that to the left, like a teapot, and it was hollow, and it technically worked as a teapot. I don't think you'd get many people lifting the skateboard up 'cause it's rather heavy.
Okay.
But that was in the local paper. There
Oh,
you go.
right.
Wow.
For the
Very
Young
good.
Seasiders competition in the Blackpool Gazette. There you go. Anyway, moving swiftly back to gardening.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I am going to link this because obviously going back to the Hepworth Wakefield, Barbara Hepworth was in the 20th century, wasn't she, from Wakefield? And she very much was inspired by the natural world and loved her sculptures to be actually outside as well. So in the gardens, there are quite a few sculptures. I think we haven't been. We really
we
should
must
go.
We must go.
But I was looking at the website and I did actually see a quotation from her, which can I just read it out?
Yeah,
Because
please do.
it sort of got to me a little bit. And she said, I prefer my work to be shown outside. Sculpture grows in the open light and with the movement of the sun. Its aspect is always changing. And it's true, isn't it? We haven't got really sculptures as such in the garden. We've got a sort of sundial and we're putting in one or two other things, but it does make a big difference, and it can just fit in with the planting, and you can sort of, rather than having it sort of on its own in the middle of a lawn, you can have it nestling amongst the plants and
or
the
just
plants
hidden under the
blowing
camellia.
around it,
Yeah.
hidden under camellia.
But
Exactly.
then it does change in a way. The sculpture
Yeah.
never changes, but it appears to with the seasons
Absolutely.
and the plants
Yes.
that change
I
around.
would
Yeah.
argue, because there's another sculptor that I was really, really big into when I was in my sculpting, which was Andy Goldsworthy. So if you've not seen any of Andy Goldsworthy's work, it is all nature and it is fabulous stuff. But yeah, I totally agree with that. And my argument would be that your garden is a sculpture in some
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
You've placed those plants, you've encouraged them, pruned them.
Sculpture, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. So
Yeah, well, we must go. So, I mean, it must be really interesting as well for Katie to be there because,
Yeah.
the garden is all the time changing and the sculpture's in there. So she's the only gardener there. I think she has a good team of volunteers, which is great. And I say from the photographs I've seen, it looks an amazing place to visit. She was telling me how popular it is as well. Lots of people go regularly just to sit in the garden. They treat it because it's in the city of Wakefield.
Oh, it's like a
She's in a
little
lot of people,
oasis.
and there's
Yeah.
no fences or boundaries. So I think lots of the locals will use it as their garden. They can just
Yeah.
come and sit and read or just watch nature, which is brilliant.
sounds lovely.
Yeah,
Good.
it does.
We should probably get on to
We
some
should.
things to do in the garden. Just a reminder, go to our website if you want links to things like advice videos, or if you want to find apple pruning, what was it? No, apple grafting videos
Exactly,
and things like
yes.
that, and ways to get in touch, to go to the website. But yeah, what should we be doing? How are we going to do some renewal pruning and moving plants in the
Right.
garden?
Well, it's a good time to move plants. You know, we've talked about planting bare root last week, but if you've got established trees or shrubs in the garden, as long as they've not been in 50 years, but if they've been in, 6, 7, 8 years and you think, oh, that's probably not in the right place, you can still very often move them. I do it all the time. If it might have only been in a year, and we're going to be doing some this year. The modern term for this is editing, when you're moving things around. And you think, well, that actually, I've got a hydrangea over in a border over there, but it's a bit squashed in. So I'm going to move it just 2 or 3 meters into a bigger space. And this is the perfect time to do it because the leaves have fallen off. Even with evergreens, you can do it because they're going into their rest period, but it's not too cold to cause any upset to the roots. So the secret is to dig up as much of the root as you can. And before you do that, decide where you're going to plant it and improve that soil and dig your hole there first, or dig it as well as you can. Dig your plant out with as much root on as possible and get it into the new position and planted. And very often, if you do it carefully and don't damage too much root, that plant doesn't know it's been moved. Whether it's a clump of herbaceous or a 10-year-old apple tree, you can get away with it. Obviously, bigger the tree, you're going to need a bit of help. You might need a couple of you to lift it out, but this is the time to do it if you need to. And then renewal pruning is a thing that is something we don't do very often, but it's often when a plant, a shrub usually, or sometimes a tree, hasn't been pruned for a number of years and it gets a bit neglected. And the shrubs, for example, get very congested. And sometimes they're just given a light prune and then they just get this massive twiggy growth in there and they don't flower so well, they don't perform as well. So renewal pruning is a case of where we're going to take out some of the old wood to encourage new wood to renew itself. So, you could, with many, chop them down to ground level and they just spurt up like a porcupine, but we want to keep that nice shape. So what you would aim to do is do nothing more than 1/3 of the wood out. And you're essentially taking out the older stems, cut some down to ground level, open it up, get some air into it. So you want to end with roughly the same shape of shrub, but you've greatly thinned it and taken off the wispy tops. And then it will make new growth for next year. And then next year you'll do phase 2 of renewal pruning to take out some more of the old. And if you do that over 3 years, you can totally rejuvenate and renew an old shrub because there's nothing older than 3 years in there because you've gradually taken it out. And the great thing is, if you make a mistake, it's going to grow. So, just go in there, but don't go mad to start with. About 1/3 is all you need to do to open it up. And we've got 1 or 2 things still to do in our garden like that. So
maybe we should do a video on that because it sounds easy, but I think when you're faced with the shrub in front of you, that could be quite scary, couldn't it? I think for somebody who's not done that before.
Okay, we'll do one.
So I think we
find
could maybe
a
do
suitable
something on
candidate
that.
to do it on.
Yeah.
Come and do some renewal pruning at my house if you want.
Right,
And find the sculpture underneath the camellia.
Yeah,
Could do the
reveal
camellia.
sculpture. There we go. So and then just finally, a very quick one. If you've still got any fruit and veg in store that you've lifted from the garden or picked, and you've got it in a coal shed or a garage or wherever, check it on a regular basis because, we're getting now into the season where things start to rot a little bit if they get a bit warm. So just a reminder, Jill, we've still got a big marrow that needs using.
I know. Well, I think because we've been doing quite a few talks to some garden clubs and youth 3As and flower groups and lots of
WIs
stuff.
and everybody,
And I've been taking some of my marrow and ginger jam for them to taste. So I think it's gone down so well. I need to make another batch of marrow and ginger.
Well, there's one in there with your name on it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just need to find some ginger now.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah,
We'll be talking about ginger next week, actually, won't
Good
we?
link.
We are talking
Well
about
done.
ginger. Yes.
Smooth.
It's like we planned these things.
Yeah.
No.
Oh,
Good. So
On that
that's
note-
it. Are we done? Yeah, lovely. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye.
Bye.
watch the gardening videos on YouTube, Instagram or Facebook. Our short reels are also on TikTok, and all the contact details and links to all the videos and the podcast episodes can all be found at potsandtrowels.com.